My dear brothers and sisters, there comes a time in every soul's journey when the echo of a name, a memory, or a presence continues to ring in the chambers of the mind, long after the person has left the room of your life. She's in your head, but not in your life, and that contradiction is trying to teach you something holy. Memory, my dear friend, is one of God's most mysterious gifts. It is not given to us as a rope to tie ourselves back to what once was, but as a mirror to help us understand what we have become. When someone remains in your mind, appearing in dreams, slipping into your thoughts in quiet moments, it is easy to mistake this for a divine sign, as though God were urging you to reopen a door He Himself once closed. But be careful, not every echo is an invitation. Sometimes it is simply the soul emptying itself of what it no longer needs to carry. We are not called to live in museums of what we once had. Memory was never meant to be a prison cell. It was meant to be a teacher. When she lingers in your head, it may not be because you're supposed to go back to her, but because you're supposed to understand what her presence, and more importantly, her absence, revealed about you. What did you learn? What did you gain? What did you ignore? What do you now see more clearly in her absence than you ever could in her nearness? God often allows someone to pass through our lives not so we can hold on to them forever, but so that their presence might refine something in us. Like a sculptor, chiseling away the unnecessary to reveal the divine form within, He uses people, moments, and even heartbreak to shape our character. Her memory may visit you not to tempt you back, but to remind you of how far you've come. That longing you feel is not always about her. Sometimes it's about the version of yourself you once were when she was around. Version that perhaps needed to be broken to be blessed. Do not confuse memory with a mission. Reflection is not the same as reconnection. Reflection leads to healing. Reconnection without wisdom leads to repeating, and the soul does not grow through repetition. It grows through revelation. So the next time she appears in your thoughts, don't ask, "Should I go back?" Instead ask, "What is God trying to show me through this?" Because if she was truly meant to stay, you wouldn't be haunted by memory. You'd be living in presence. Let memory do its sacred work, not to pull you backward, but to prepare you forward. Of course, here's a more expanded version of you we're not created to chase shadows. In the reflective and soul-stirring style of Fulton J. Sheen, without the heading, as requested. You were not created to chase what runs from you. You are not formed from the breath of God to exhaust yourself in pursuit of things, or people, that cannot see your worth. A shadow may resemble a form, but it has no substance. It moves, it flickers, it lingers. Yes, but it offers nothing you can hold. And yet, how many of us spend our lives following the silhouette of someone who once meant something to us, hoping that if we run fast enough, long enough, we might bring them back into the light. But the soul was not made to live in the half-light. You are not born to be a beggar of affection, standing outside the heart of someone who's already closed the door. Love that makes you chase it endlessly is not love. It is torment disguised as hope. And hope, when placed in the wrong place, becomes delusion. There's a tragedy in trying to make someone stay who was never anchored to your destiny. Just because someone made an impression on your spirit does not mean they were meant to remain. And too often, we fall in love not with the person, but with the possibility of who they could have been if they'd chosen to love us rightly. That is the danger of chasing shadows. You project your light onto someone else and then mourn when it doesn't reflect the way you dreamed it would. God never intended for you to run after what fades. He created you to walk in truth, to stand in clarity, to love in peace. When someone walks away from your life, it may hurt, yes, but that pain is not your identity. It is your transition. Your spirit is not starving because of their absence. It is starving because you've been feeding it illusions. Stop rewriting the past in your imagination just to make sense of their absence. Stop chasing their approval in your thoughts when they gave you their silence in real life. God does not hide your purpose behind a person who no longer chooses you. He does not bury your worth in the heart of someone who walked away. That is not divine design. That is emotional captivity. You are not a servant of memory. You are a child of God, and children of God walk in light, never in the shadow of someone else's indecision. Let her go. Let the image go. Let the longing go. If it's not rooted in reality, it's not worthy of your pursuit. Your heart was made for something whole, not something that flickers and fades with the setting sun. Step into the light. That's where God is waiting, certainly. Here's a deeply expanded version of absence is sometimes the presence of grace, written in the reflective and spiritually charged tone reminiscent of Fulton J. Sheen, without the heading as requested. Absence is one of the most misunderstood gifts God gives. To the aching heart, it feels like punishment. To the wounded soul, it feels like rejection. And yet, in the divine economy of grace, absence is often heaven's most merciful intervention. When someone walks out of your life, when their voice becomes a memory and their presence becomes a void, we instinctively mourn. We question. We plead. We rewind the moments and ask ourselves what could have been different, what we could have said, what we should have done. But perhaps their absence is not the enemy. Perhaps it is the sacred space where God begins to work. You see, not all blessings arrive with noise. Not all divine movements come through dramatic miracles. Some come in the quiet disappearance of a person who was never meant to stay. What feels like loss to you may look like protection to God. That silence you now sit in the one that used to be filled with their laughter, their messages, their nearness might actually be the canvas on which God is now painting something eternal in you. So many times, we beg for God to bring someone back, unaware that He was the one who removed them. Not out of cruelty, but out of care, because He saw what you could not. He saw the future they were not prepared to walk with you into. He saw how their presence, if prolonged, would dim your light instead of fan your flame. And so, in love, He allowed the distance. In mercy, He permitted the silence. In wisdom, He gave you the gift of absence, and what a gift it is. If only we had eyes to see it. Absence creates space. It creates stillness. And in stillness, we finally hear God's voice again. In stillness, we stop performing for someone else's attention and begin to rediscover our worth. In stillness, we are no longer busy being someone's almost, someone's option, someone's temporary comfort. We become available to God in ways we never were when we were consumed by that relationship. The world will tell you that absence is a loss, but heaven may be whispering that it is a release. You're not alone. You're being refined. You're not forgotten. You're being recentered. When someone exits, grace often enters through the very door they closed. And grace never comes to harm. It comes to heal, to reorder, to uplift. It may come dressed as emptiness at first, but soon it will blossom into peace if you allow it. So do not resent the absence. Honor it. Sit with it. Let it teach you what presence never could. Because the one who left may never return, but the one who remains, God Himself, has never left. And in His hands, even the aching absence of someone you once loved becomes a sacred place of transformation. Sometimes, what you're calling abandonment is actually deliverance. Sometimes, the person you miss was the wall between you and the life God was trying to lead you into. And sometimes, absence is not a curse at all. It is the quiet, holy whisper of grace saying, I had to make room. Something better is coming. Absolutely. Here's a richly expanded version of Stop Trying to Resurrect What God Let Die, in the deep, reverent, and introspective voice of Fulton J. Sheen, without the heading as requested, there is a sacred pain in letting go, a sorrow that often feels like death. And yet, there are certain things in our lives that God, in His mercy, allows to die, not to punish us, but to protect us. Not every ending is a tragedy. Some endings are surgeries. And when God removes someone, some attachment, some illusion, we must resist the temptation to run back into the graveyard of what once was, trying to breathe life into what He, in His sovereignty, has already buried. You must understand, resurrection belongs to Christ alone. He rose because He was without sin. He rose because He was the life itself. But the same power that raised Him is not ours to wield over what was never meant to live forever. Some relationships are not meant to survive growth. Some connections were seasonal, not eternal. They served their purpose. They were part of your journey, not your destination. But the heart is stubborn. It confuses history with destiny. It clings to the familiar even when the familiar is bleeding us dry. We go back to old conversations, reread old messages, reimagine old moments. And in doing so, we keep a corpse on life support. We stitch together memories and pretend it's still love. But love that no longer lives in truth is no longer love. It becomes a lie we rehearse out of loneliness. God, who is the author of life, does not make mistakes. When He removes, He intends to replace, not always with another person, but often with a clearer vision of yourself. What He allows to die, He does so to free you. But how can He give you new life if your arms are still wrapped around something He's trying to take away? You must stop returning to tombs expecting temples. Stop romanticizing what once drained you. If it were life, giving, it wouldn't have left you empty. If it were sacred, it wouldn't have broken you in places God is still trying to heal. And if it were from Him, He would never have had to force it to end. There is holiness in closure. It may come through heartbreak, through silence, through a painful goodbye. But closure is not the absence of love. It is the beginning of obedience. And obedience to God's will always leads to greater peace, even if the path is marked with tears. So let it go, not with bitterness, but with blessing. Thank God for what it taught you. Thank Him for what it revealed in you. But do not fight Him by trying to resurrect what He has gently, deliberately, and mercifully let die. Because in every death He allows, there is the promise of something greater, not the return of the past, but the resurrection of you. Certainly, here's an expanded and deeply heartfelt version of healing begins when you let go with love, in the spiritual, elegant, and compassionate tone of Fulton J. Sheen, without the heading, as requested. Healing does not begin when you forget. Healing does not begin when the memory fades or when the ache disappears. No, true healing begins the moment you choose to let go. Not with anger, not with resentment, not with blame, but with love. Letting go with love is one of the most courageous acts a soul can perform. It is the quiet decision to release what you once held sacred, without allowing bitterness to poison the beauty it once held. It is saying, I still honor what it meant, even though it can no longer be. It is the strength to walk away with grace when the heart still wants to stay out of fear or fantasy. So many try to let go through rage. They sever ties with sharp words or cold silence, thinking that hardness will protect them. But healing is not found in hardness. It is found in surrender. You do not need to hate what you lost in order to move on. In fact, if you still carry love, let it be love transformed. Not love that begs, not love that clings, but love that releases with dignity. There is no shame in still caring. There is only sorrow in confusing care with captivity. You can love someone and still know they are not meant to walk the rest of the path with you. You can cherish the moments without chaining your future to a past that cannot be resurrected. You can bless them silently, even as you close the door that no longer leads to peace. God does not call us to erase our hearts. He calls us to purify them, to strip away the idols we build around people, to remove the need to be chosen by someone who could not see our worth, to remove the illusion that we can only be whole if they return. You are already whole, not because they stayed, but because God remained. And so, when you let go, let it be an act of faith. Trust that what is gone is no longer needed for where you are going. Trust that your destiny is not held hostage by any one person, no matter how deeply you loved them. Trust that by letting go with love, you make space for something purer, something divinely appointed, something rooted in truth rather than hope alone. You will not forget overnight. There will be days when the heart remembers and the mind wanders back. But each time, bring that memory to God. Say, I release them to you, not in anger but in peace, not with wounds but with reverence. And over time, love will no longer feel like a chain. It will feel like a blessing that passed through your life, left its lesson, and moved on. Letting go with love does not mean you lost. It means you grew. It means you honored what was, and trusted in what will be. It means your healing has begun, not by force, but by freedom, not by forgetting, but by forgiving, and not by having less love, but by learning how to love rightly, first for God and then for yourself. That is when the soul truly begins to heal. That is when peace, deep and unshakable, finally finds its home in you. My friends, stop rehearsing the pain. Stop worshiping the ghost. She may be in your head, but if she is not in your life, let God be the gardener who prunes what cannot bear fruit. Don't let someone who's gone keep renting space in your soul. God is writing a new chapter. Don't stay on the same page just because you liked one paragraph. And remember, your destiny is not behind you. It is ahead with Him. Amen.